Well, hello everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. On behalf of the British-Kazakh Society, it's a pleasure to welcome you today to this webinar, Encouraging Mining Investment in Kazakhstan. I'm also pleased to say this is in cooperation with our special partner today, and Ros will say a few words before we go into the agenda.
Thank you very much, David. Representing the Department for International Trade, we're very pleased to be partnering with the British-Kazakh Society again to present our second webinar on mining. It's funny, you don't get any Kazakh events for ages, but then they're like buses and you get three come along together. Last week we had the Kazakh Mining Online event. Yesterday we had Kazakh Invest, and today we've got the BKS, and it's fantastic that there's such a focus on mining in Kazakhstan, which is a crucial industry for the country going forward. And I'm very pleased today that we've got three speakers who focus on different stages of mining investment in Kazakhstan. With Wardell Armstrong and SRK, who look at the exploration stage, with RG Gold, who are in development stage, and with Kaz Minerals, who are actually covering all stages but have mines in production. So I hope you enjoy today's session, and over to you.
Thank you. Yes, as Ros mentioned, we have a very impressive panel and a great moderator today. However, first of all, I'd like to introduce our key guest, which is Askat Pshenbayev, Director of Subsoil Use at the Ministry of Industry and Infrastructure. Askat has a perfect background for the role. He graduated from Camborne School of Mines, has lived as a miner would do in Zhezkazgan, Pavlodar and Karaganda, and previously worked with Kazakh MIS and the Committee of Geology. So Askat will give us a view from nur-sultan. Askat, please.
Thank you, David. Good morning and good afternoon, dear participants. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event. Yes, please, next slide. As many of you know, in 2018, next please, the Subsoil and Subsoil Use Code came into force, which absorbed the best world practice in the industry. This is a rational management of the state subsoil fund through the subsoil management program, access to geological information, the principle of the first application, reduction of administrative barriers, obtaining an exploration license within 10 working days, 1 year for obtaining a production license, an international standard for calculating reserves, called as KZRC. So the condition, next please. The condition for issuing a license is that applicant meets the minimum qualification requirements established by the court. Its financial capability, availability of specialists in the field of geology, and the absence of tax arrears. Today, more than 800 licenses have been issued for the exploration of solid minerals. It should be noted that this license allows exploration of all types of minerals, except for hydrocarbon raw materials and uranium. Also, within the validity period of the exploration license, there is a priority right to move to the production stage in the event of reserves calculation. The selection, next please. The selection of the site is carried out in blocks adjacent to each other. One block is equal to 2.4 square kilometers. The entire territory of the country is divided into blocks. Today, more than 300,000 blocks have been put up for exploration of solid minerals according to the principle of the first application. The examination of the project documents in the competent authority has been abolished. Expertise and approval for compliance with environmental and industrial safety requirements remains. Instead of work program, requirements for minimum costs are introduced, which progress every 3 years. Now you can see in this slide. The term for issuing a license for exploration of solid minerals has been reduced to 10 working days. Project document, the exploration plan is developed and approved by the subsoil user. Expenses for the socio-economic development of the region remain only for hydrocarbons, uranium, and current contracts for solid mineral resources. And for license for exploration or production of solid mineral resources are transferred to lease payments of subsoil users. Rates are determined in the tax code. Approximately it's £100 per year. So about project documents, the mining plan is developed and approved by the subsoil user, agreed with the authorized bodies in the field of environmental and industrial safety. The liquidation plan. No return, please. The liquidation plan is developed by the subsoil user is subject to a comprehensive examination conducted by authorized body for solid minerals. On this slide, you can see the amount of minimum costs that the subsoil user is obligated to spend on exploration during each year, depending on the number of blocks. So you can see during each year, from the first to the third year of the term of exploration, subsoil user must spend £5,975 for one block under the exploration license. It's a minimal requirement which subsoil user must achieve during the 1 year. So just for suitable, I did this amount in a pound. During the next year, if you have, for example, from 6 to 10 under the exploration license blocks, so it's over than £800 per year. So in the next slide, shows the annual minimum cost in the production phase. Yep. Oh, sorry, it's for exploration. Next slide, please. Yeah, in this is next, please. Yeah, this is in a minimum cost in the production phase. It's depend on the kind of metals which you are going to produce. So in order to improve business process in the middle of next year, next slide, please. It is planned to introduce an information system of the National Data Bank of Mineral Resources, where anyone can apply for a license for exploration and production without leaving home, get acquainted with geological information online, and so on. I hope my presentation was useful for you. And if you have any questions, I am ready to answer them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Askat, for that very comprehensive review there. Excellent. Thank you very much. So let's move on to our moderator, Mike Beare. Mike is with SRK Consulting in Almaty. He has nearly 30 years in the industry and was also a graduate from the Camborne School of Mines. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, I was very interested to see that talk there from Askat, and to note that he went to, yes, the right place, of course. And, on that last slide, I mean, I think that's a mine in Kazakhstan, isn't it, on that last slide you just showed? Yeah, I think I've been there. Anyway, I'm just going to introduce our first speaker after Askat, which he works for Wardell Armstrong, which was established in 1837. I certainly had no idea that it had been going that long, probably actually longer than the School of Mines, actually, but I don't think Che has been there that long. So I'd like to
no.
Che Osmond, who's the Technical Director of Wardell Armstrong. He's joining us from Cornwall, and he's going to talk about a bit of the background to Kazakhstan and hopefully give you, all your listeners, a bit of an introduction to what's going on here. And Che's a geologist, so he'll be able to give you some insight on the projects from a geological perspective. So please take it away, Che.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Just trying to share the screen. What's that done? Yeah. Has that worked?
Yes.
You can see. Okay, I just need to go to full screen. I think that we. There we go. Right. Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the introduction. As he says, I work for Wardell Armstrong International. It's been going quite a few years. We did our first job in Kazakhstan in 1992, so around about nearly 30 years, and have continuously held an office in Kazakhstan in Almaty since 2004. I'm not going to put up the usual disclaimer slide, but suffice to say that these are my words, these are my slides, my opinions, and may not necessarily reflect those of the company. Right, mineral potential of Kazakhstan. As we can see, there's some pretty significant headline numbers from Kazakhstan. There's production out of Kazakhstan of around 60 different minerals, and the extractive industry as a whole generates about 30% of the nation's GDP. Of which the mineral fuels, the oil and gas industry is about 60% export earnings, and then the hard minerals and metals, which is our sector, accounts for about sort of 25–30% of that. However, in saying that, as with some other countries, there is a reliance on the extractive sector to the economy, which does make it vulnerable to the commodity price fluctuations. Which, as I say, is not just for Kazakhstan. There are numerous other countries in the world where there's a large dependence on the hard rock minerals industry. Having said that, Kazakhstan's mineral sector has suffered a bit of a paucity of new exploration activity in the last sort of 20 or 30 years. And most of the active mines that are currently producing have really been in operation for decades. Although, as we've already heard earlier from the opening presentation from Askat, Kazakhstan is working very hard to enhance the investment attractiveness and opportunities within the sector, and in particular for exploration activity, which we'll mention a little bit later. But yeah, as we can see, it ranks pretty highly with the rest of the world in terms of its mineral wealth. So there's clearly opportunities there. Move on to the next slide. There are over 200, I think over 220 registered mining enterprises rather in Kazakhstan. Most of it is dominated, by the large national companies, as we can see up there, the Kaz Minerals, Kaz Zinc, Kazakhmys, Kazatomprom, of course, for the uranium. But there are some other international companies that have a significant presence in the country, ranging from the large Glencore type companies and Rio Tinto to Central Asia Metals that we see up there as well, which who've been operating in the country for quite a number of years. Equally important, perhaps significant to note, is the work and the presence of the national operators like Taukan Samuruk and also Kaz Geology, both of which work with foreign companies to help explore and develop and bring assets into operation. yeah, so, but again, you know, compared to other global mining destinations, there really has been little growth in international companies anyway. And I think personally, I've probably seen over the last 20 years that the sort of number of international companies entering Kazakhstan and staying in Kazakhstan, more importantly, probably hasn't changed a huge amount, which is an unfortunate situation, and one that we hope will change over the forthcoming years. So in terms of its mineral production, we've got a few charts up there to show some of the main commodities where it sits. About 80% of all mining industry products out of Kazakhstan are exported to over 30, nearly 40 countries worldwide. Although significantly, nearly 80% of the iron ore that's produced in country remains within the domestic market for steel production, with the rest obviously exported to the neighboring China and Russian markets. Copper is another significant metal that's produced in Kazakhstan, and pretty much all the copper produced in country actually stays in country for processing, but then once refined, obviously exported globally. Uranium, quite clearly from that graph in the bottom right-hand corner, Kazakhstan is the #1 producer of uranium globally, and that's again dominated by the national company Kazatomprom, and it exports over 30%, nearly 40% of the uranium to China, 25% to India, and then elsewhere around the globe. It does host about 13 or 14% of the global uranium resources, and is considered to have the second largest uranium reserve after Australia. Interestingly, Kazakhstan also pioneered the in-situ leach process, or in-situ recovery, which is the extraction method for uranium, and that accounts for about half of all uranium produced in the world. Perhaps last but not least is gold, which is one of the major drivers. It produces, Kazakhstan, about 100 tons of gold. It's just outside the top 10 producers, but as we'll see in the next slide, I'm guessing that will probably change in the short term. If we look, I think these graphs are perhaps even more sort of significant than the previous ones in terms of global production. This is specifically Kazakh production from some of the main commodities again. And as we can see quite clearly from all of those graphs, over the last 10 to 15 years, production from significantly gold, but also some of those other commodities has increased considerably. Gold, you know, as an example, gold's produced from about 50 or so operations out of nearly or over 300 sort of stake recognized registered deposits. Although most of the gold tends to be relatively low grade, which makes it a little bit more challenging, it is somewhat mitigated by the efficient mining practices and the long, you know, period of operation of these mines. Although, you know, historically, I think if we went back sort of 20 years or more, we would have seen, you know, very little growth at all in most of these commodities. This has really happened in the last sort of 15 or 20 years with most of these, I guess, as it's opened up to the global markets and become more accessible. So we can see from that. How are we doing for time, Mike? Are we okay?
Yeah, you've got a couple more minutes.
Couple more minutes, right. We'll move, I guess, perhaps to sort of, as a little bit of a, I guess, summary, if we like, of Kazakhstan and the mining situation. And I put together a little bit of a SWOT analysis, which is something we often do for mining projects, and just to get an idea of where Kazakhstan sits, I guess. And I guess, you know, that what's on the screen now is just some of the headline sort of titles that we look at. And significantly, as we'd expect, obviously one of the strengths is the mineral wealth. Huge resources and reserves of a huge number of minerals, you know, so without doubt the opportunity is there in that sense. It is, as we say in exploration terms, it is elephant country, and that's where you need to go looking. perhaps, you know, and also just probably just one of the other things to say about that in terms of strengths. I think one of the things that I've seen, particularly over the last few years, is the openness of a lot of the mining companies and their sort of willingness and enthusiasm to embrace new mining approaches, new technologies, automation, and just really trying to pull themselves in line with the rest of the world in terms of the advances in mining itself, both in terms of the mining operation and processing. So that's something I think which is a huge sort of strength and benefit to the Kazakh mining industry. If we looked at one of the weaknesses, I guess as we mentioned just briefly, a lot of the deposits tend to be quite low grade. There are impurities which need to be dealt with, usually in the processing side of things, and that is obviously a challenge. One that is approached, I think, as we mentioned, they're very keen to advance their mining techniques and their processing techniques. So all these things, as is ever the case with mining projects and deposits, there are always going to be problems and challenges, and they will look at those to overcome them. Opportunities, I think Askat mentioned earlier on, I think government support. It's clear that in the last, even going back probably 10 years, at least in the last 5 years, you know, the Kazakh government has tried very hard and has introduced new reporting codes and Kazakhstan codes for the mining industry, and is seeking to really assist as much as they can to open up the industry and develop the industry, and get more investment to the mining industry in Kazakhstan, and that's probably one of the real sort of bonuses I think that are on offer at the moment in Kazakhstan. I guess last but not least, of the SWOT analysis of the threats, the global market, that is one thing I think that we need to take into account and be aware of, really. As all the countries open up, as the global industry opens up, it's a huge playing field. We are not just competing in-house, we are competing on a global stage against mining companies and geological deposits from all over the world. It's a big market, and with that comes huge competition, both in terms for investment and in terms of attractiveness to get those international companies interested and investing in Kazakhstan. So hopefully that has given everyone a fairly quick, brief cover and introduction to the mining industry in Kazakhstan, the opportunities that are there, the mineral wealth it has, and a little bit to perhaps encourage a little bit more investment. So with that, I'll hand back to Mike, and thank you very much. Spasibo большое.
Thank you very much, Che. That's very interesting insight. I think I'm probably going to get a text message from Elon Musk about the manganese before too long. Anyway, we're going to move on, and our next speaker is works for a company called RG Gold, and they've got a very exciting gold project here. And his name is Cliff Adams, and despite going to the Royal School of Mines, he's managed to forge a successful career in metallurgy. And he's going to talk all about his project and particularly the process plant. So take it away, Cliff.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide, please. This is just a bit of background on the company. RG Gold operates the Regaradok gold mine, which is in the Bulaboy district in northern Kazakhstan. The deposit is located close to some of the largest deposits in Kazakhstan. RG Gold is actually owned as a joint venture between Verni Capital, one of the largest private equity investment groups in Kazakhstan, and RCF, an international mining-focused private fund. This allows us to bring together the strengths of Verni Capital of having considerable experience in both building projects, not necessarily mining, in the Kazakhstan area and operating, with RCF, who has access to many international experts. And to that end, our project is actually being designed to the latest standards, including International Cyanide Code and ANCOLD for the tailings dam design, just to mention a couple. Currently, RG Gold operates a 2 million tonne per year oxide ore plant with the mines of 2 pits, North and South Regaradoc. But starting from the third quarter of 22, we expect to start treating the sulfide ore through a new carbon plant. Having said that, we also have considerable areas of interest associated around the current site. Next, please. Sorry, next slide. Okay. This is a very simple picture cartoon of what the current heap leach operation, so I won't go into any details about that. Just shows the existing operation, our 3 crushing lines, gold absorption and conveyors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, what we show here is the current signs of how the gold production increased over years. The mine actually started in 2010. In 2014, it was purchased by Bernie Capital. That's why this particular diagram shows started 2014. As you can see, it's more than doubled in the net following by increasing the number of crushing up to 3. And the idea being that we will go into 2022-23, which is when we commission the new plant, will be going up to 150 ounces of gold production. Okay. Next slide, please. So work is currently underway on the new CIP plant. The plant selected is 5 million tonnes per year, given an operational life of 18 years. As Che let, we're also a low-grade mine, which is over 1 gram a tonne, 1.1 gram a tonne, but we have got a large deposit with 18 years life. 5 million tonnes per year was selected based on the water's resources we had guaranteed, since then we increased them. The new mine will employ over 1,000 people in the Shootings region, and it's a fairly conventional CIP plant. If you go to the next slide, please, I'll just go through that quickly. This is showing the new design for the plant. 3-stage crushing, primary jaw crushing, secondary cone crushing. The 3rd stage crushing, we've got an HPG, or high pressure grinding rolls, rather than conventional crushing. The reason we've gone for this rather than a SAG mill is due to the hardness of the ore. The ore is in the top 1% of hardness as measured by the J.K. Schmidt Institute. And even with the low power costs here, it still is uneconomic really to run it's a SAG mill with these powering efficiencies compared to crushing. So we've got 2 ball mills in parallel. Each of them has a gravity circuit in circuit with it. We then have a pre-leach thickener, leaching, then CIP. Here we've actually gone for these CIP tanks are actually pump cell tanks. These are much smaller than conventional CIP tanks. These are only 200 cubic meters as opposed to 800 for a conventional tank. Normal tanks run about an hour per tank. The advantage of this is that the leach tanks can be outside in what we're looking at here. The CIP tanks have to really be inside for effective operation due to potential freezing on the screens and general operation. So going for pump cells reduces building site and saves considerably on heating costs. We then installed in a tailings thickener. The reason for this is to first minimize cyanide consumption, but even more so to minimize detoxification. Detox is a very expensive process. We're looking at over $1 per ton, near about $1.20 per ton for detox. So by thickening first, we actually reduce those costs to 50%. In the detox, we actually reduce to less than 50 ppm. We're aiming about 20 to 30 ppm cyanide, both WAD and fresh-free cyanide. That is in line with the International Cyanide Code, and that's before being sent to tailings. Okay. Next slide, please. What's the schedule? Well, currently, we have already ordered the long lead items. These are the primary jaw and secondary cone crusher. the HPGR and mills, they are due to be delivered first quarter through to mid-2021 next year. The TSF construction and power line construction is underway. The CRP EPC contractor, which is going to be a local contractor, will be appointed next month, and we're aiming for mechanical completion second quarter 2022, first quarter or first gold production being mid-2022. The power line supply line is, we have installed quite a long power line, it's over 60 kilometers. This is so that we can take advantage of the rates going from the McKink's main substation rather than buying it through a third party as we do currently, taking one from a local supplier in Institutions. Next slide, please. So, what are the advantages of operating in Kazakhstan? First one is, as you said, the low power cost. We're aiming for actually under 3 cents per kilowatt hour, which is pretty good compared to anywhere nowadays. Secondly, availability of skilled and inexpensive labour with mining experience. Here, not only mining experience, there is quite a good rapport between some of the mining companies in the country. So we have already started making deals where we can lend out some of our operators for 2, 3, 4 months ahead of commissioning, which from our point of view is great because we get them back having got experience operating in plants. From then, these other guys, they get 4 months, 3 or 4 months of free labour. Water sources available, we actually are now finding water close, and we originally had taken from a site 60 kilometres away, we're now getting it from water closer. Road connections, the plant is 1 hour from Shuchins, the local town, biggest town, and 2 hours from nur-sultan on a very good motorway. So there's good telephone and internet connections. Favorable tax laws. We are split into two. We are RG processing. RG Gold holds the mining part because they have the Subsoil miner's license. They're not holding being a processing, not Subsoil miner, we actually can get certain tax benefits. We're still negotiating finally, but kind of things you are entitled to are reduced or zero import duties and certain reduced or tax holidays for VAT and income tax. And then finally, investment security. Look, Kazakhstan, particularly compared to some of its close neighbours, is extremely secure. The government is stable. So the investment in Kazakhstan, you can actually, you've got asset security, as we mentioned earlier, and this allows you to do long-term planning and indeed to do forward plan, to take an investment and be sure that you can actually keep that investment eventually. I'll give an example. A mine I was previously, many moons ago, and 2 owners ago, was in Juri, which they actually burned part of it last month. Okay, all right. Thank you. I'm ready to answer any questions, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cliff. Yeah, we'll take the questions at the end, but I certainly note your comment about detoxification being an expensive process. Certainly the last time that I booked into the Priory, it cost me a fortune. So anyway, moving on, we've got another speaker, Chris Bucknall. Now, Chris is the head of investor relations at Kaz Minerals. He's been there since about 2014, and he's been involved in the ramp up of 2 growth projects during this period. And he's going to give us a little bit of a background about Kaz Minerals and what they've been up to. They're one of the sort of most high-profile companies in Kazakhstan that are listed in London. And take it away, Chris.
Thank you very much, Mike. So yes, Kaz Minerals is the largest copper producer in Kazakhstan. We also have a small copper gold mine in Kyrgyzstan and a new development project in the far east of Russia. In our measured and indicated resources, we've got contained copper metal of around 10 million tons in Kazakhstan and 9 million tons in Russia. Our largest assets by production on the map here are Boshakol and Aktogay. They are large-scale open pit mines, which started operations in around 2016. They, as mentioned in the Wardell Armstrong presentation, actually, they use modern mining and processing technologies. They were built recently, and they do benefit from a number of factors which helps us to stay right at the bottom of the cost curve globally. We've got very low strip ratios, low power costs, good water availability, skilled labour, excellent transport infrastructure, and we've got rail links right into China, which is the world's largest market for copper. So 80% of our revenue comes from copper. We have a significant byproduct of gold as well, which is 14% of our revenues as of 2019. We also have some zinc and silver, though these are less significant. 76% of our sales are to Chinese customers due to our location and the market dynamics for copper concentrate, which is in strong demand in China. As a company, we're very much focused on growth, and we have a strong track record of delivery of that. Mining projects are notorious for being late and over budget, but we delivered the Bucknall and Askat projects on time, on budget, and ramped them up quickly. This delivered a 40% annual growth rate in production over the 2015 to 2019 period shown here. And this looks like all of the copper growth, the copper production growth in Kazakhstan that was shown on earlier slides over that period. Looking to the future, we do intend to continue this growth. We have a near-term growth project at the Askat mine, which is the yellow area on this chart. So the Bucknall and Askat projects are the ones that have taken us to this point. And what we're doing at Askat is building an additional concentrator with the same mine, but we will mine it twice as fast effectively, and that will add 80,000 tonnes of copper production over the 2022 to 2027 period. And production from the Askat expansion project is scheduled to start at the end of 2021. Longer term, we are starting a new project in Russia, called the Biome Sky project, which you can see as the blue area on this chart. I wanted to say a few words about the performance of, or our performance in the mining industry in 2020 through the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's clearly been the main challenge for everybody this year. Our performance has been very strong. We've not missed a single ton of production. In fact, we're on track for the top end of the guidance ranges we issue for copper and gold production, which we set those at the beginning of the year and haven't changed them. So how did we achieve this? I mean, it was a partnership, I think, between the company, its employees, and local and central government authorities. And what we did was very quickly, when the outbreak kind of started, is that we isolated our main sites at Bucknall and Askat. And in some cases, that meant that we had people working for 2 or even 3 months on those sites, living on the permanent camp for all that time and not being able to leave, paid overtime, obviously, on a voluntary basis. That gave us the time to establish a new testing and isolation procedure to keep everybody safe in the longer term. So when we started to make shift rotations in May again, we were able to put people through 4 or even 5 tests, starting at their point of travel, on the journey, on arrival, spending a week, now 2 weeks in an isolation camp on site before they would be admitted into the main workforce. And in that way, we did detect cases which were in line with national infection rates at various times. But anybody who was testing positive was returned home, didn't travel in the first place, and did not enter the workforce. And in that way, we've been able to avoid any major outbreaks or any outbreaks similar to those which have affected other companies worldwide and in Kazakhstan. And this means that we've been able to continue production. And that enables us to continue to deliver for all of our stakeholders this year. So first of all, employee welfare, which is obviously the priority. We kept people safe. We've had no headcount reductions. All salaries have been maintained. We've continued to generate export earnings, pay taxes and royalties. We donated $5 million to the Bergmanis Fund for supporting communities in Kazakhstan. We've delivered our products to our customers, and we've paid dividends to our shareholders. So it's been a tough year for everybody, but with those efforts that we made, we managed to keep everything very much together. This is our guidance slide. Halfway through the year, we've got our Q3 production coming up shortly, so this only shows the first 2 quarters of the year. Target for the year was 280 to 300 kilotons of copper, and we did 154 in the first half, so very much on track for the upper end of guidance, and on track for the upper end of guidance in gold as well, which is 180 to 200,000 ounces. Just a few pictures to visualize things. This is the Askat open pit as of August 2020. it's a scale. Those vehicles are actually huge, so it's bigger than it looks, but it's quite hard to get your head around the scale sometimes. At Askat, we also have a heat leaching operation where we process copper oxide ore, and we extract the copper using acid leach solution, and that's stage one in front of you there, 65 meters tall. For scale, there is a vehicle circled there, a Land Cruiser. You can see how huge that is, and we're starting the second stage of the leach project in the bottom left of this photo now. At Bucknall, this is what the pit looks like. When finished, that will be 350 meters deep and 8 kilometers long. So they are very large scale operations we're talking about here. The processing plant in the background there is just the clay plant. The main plant is off the picture. Askat expansion project really is our current kind of growth focus at the moment. It's going well. We did have a few kind of delays during the year in 2020, caused by kind of a lack of headcount on site, just because of all the disruption from COVID-19. We're still on track to deliver it in 2021, as we said we would, but it will be at the end of the year. We're still making very good progress on site with installing key equipment. So this is the main concentrated building in the foreground for the Askat 2 expansion, and Askat 1 is in the background, the finished and operating facility. So you can see that the main part of the building in the foreground is enclosed and completed. If we go inside the building, you'll see at the very bottom of this slide the SAG mill on its bearings, and the 2 ball mills have been mounted as well. This is as of August. Moving outside, tailings thickeners well underway, and will be ready in time. And here is our new permanent camp facility. So everything sort of to the bottom right of the central building there, and to the right hand side is complete and being used. And part of that is our isolation camp for COVID-19 isolation and testing. And the rest of the camp in the top left will be completed over the next few months or so. So just to summarize, we've had, I think, a very strong 2020. There risks remain with the COVID-19 situation, but we're on track. We've maintained our low-cost position, 68 cents per pound, amongst the lowest in the industry worldwide. Our long-term outlook for copper remains positive. There's a lack of new supply coming into the market, and COVID-19 delays may exacerbate future supply deficit. Our consistent operational performance is basically providing a very strong platform for us to continue to deliver our industry-leading growth pipeline at Askat and Bucknall. And that's all I have to say.
Excellent. That's very interesting. Thank you for that, Chris. I was certainly fascinated to see that. I mean, some of the scale of those operations is really quite something to behold, and particularly those thickeners. I mean, they're probably 100 meters diameter or something like that, aren't they? I have an immediate question.
They are. The original ones were 85 meter diameter, and we only had 2. Askat 2 has those 3 sort of deep cone ones, which are slightly different design to reduce water content, but so they won't be quite 85. But yeah, we've had people on site sort of disbelieving how big they are.
Absolutely. I've just a quick question about the gold production. I thought there was some gold in Askat. Is that the case, or is
a very small amount? Very small amount. No, most of our gold production comes from Bucknall. I think it's something like 1 kilo ounce of gold per year from Askat. It's not material. A little bit of silver, and both mines have a small amount of molybdenum as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the other copper porphyries in Central Asia, like Almalik, for example, they get sort of 50% of their revenue from gold. So it's quite a range in the type of copper porphyries that are around in this part of the world. So I think we'll move on to our main question and answer session. We've had a few questions come in from people who are listening, and there was I'll just start at the top of the list and work the way through. That there's a question here for Cliff. I get it's probably from one of your neighbours, actually, Cliff, asking if you have a dust suppression system in your CIP. Is that something that's part of your plans?
We've actually got dust extraction more because we're trying to keep moisture out of the plant. So it's going to be dust extraction, some dust suppression when we get to the HPGR section.
Right. Yeah. Of course, that's one of the innovations you're using there is the high pressure grinding.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, there was a question for Chris about any plans to go underground at Bozumchak, but look, Bozumchak, that's the operation.
Yes, Bozumchak. Yes, yes. Bozumchak is the small mine, as I mentioned, in Kyrgyzstan, and yes, shortly, or the next phase for that mine, which will take it out to 2035, is an underground phase. So it's been open pit up to this point, and we will transition to underground mining in the next few years. That's Bozumchak, though. That's in Kyrgyzstan, not Kazakhstan.
Yeah, not to be confused with Boshakol, which you showed us there, which clearly has got a lot longer.
People do confuse them. Yes.
Okay. Very good. I think we've still got Askat. Yeah, Askat, I've got a question for you about the sort of the general approach to getting a license in Kazakhstan. A lot of people ask me if it's necessary to have a joint venture with Taucam Samruk or Kaz Geology or one of those state or quasi-state entities. Is that the case? Can it just be an individual or a small company come and take up a license?
Thank you for your question. If I understand properly, that it's not necessarily to go into the joint venture. We are going to increase the number of junior companies, which will be explored small areas for big companies.
Mm.
As you know that before in the Soviet Union, the big deposits was discovered. So, and our aim in the mining code is to discover the small deposits, which will be interesting for big companies.
Mm.
And junior companies, if they apply to the exploration license, they must have geology and the financial ability. That's all, and you can get.
One of the principles that I understood was important years ago when your predecessor, there was Timur Toktobayev, I remember him speaking at a conference and saying that he wanted it to be a situation where a geologist could find a deposit, do some work on it, develop it and sell it and create this market. But are you required to, in order to obtain a license, to have finance? Or can you use the license to obtain finance?
It's a restriction to sell your license, exploration license during the first year.
Right.
But you can take shareholders into your junior companies. I mean, share your part of your company. So, and after the 1 year, you can sell it. So, is it correct answer?
Yeah, I was just wondering though, if, for example, if I wanted to take out a license, it's a question I get asked by lots of people. If I wanted to take out a license in Kazakhstan, do I need, other than the license fee, do I need to demonstrate that I have financial resources?
Yeah, you must demonstrate your financial ability, and you must show your bank account, and which will cover for 1 year expenditure.
Ah, right, okay.
After you can attract investment.
Okay, so it's about you need to show that you can cover the minimum requirements. And that's what you should do.
First year.
All right, no, thank you for that. That's clear, because I think that some people who would come to me and ask me that question, I think they were confused about how much money was required for that.
Yeah, and just be note that every Friday at 4 o'clock, we are providing consultation for everyone. And you can find the connection in our department sites, in Subsoil department. Every Friday at 4 o'clock, we are providing the consultation.
That's a bit like SRK, so you have Friday beers, do you?
No.
It's not, okay, it's not like that. Okay. All right, moving on. I think we've got a few more questions here. There's a question about to Chris about the Koksai project. I don't know if that's something you're involved in, Chris.
Yes, absolutely. Boxeye is another potential development project that we have in our portfolio. A year or so ago, we sold just around a 20% stake to a Chinese partner in that project, and we have been progressing a feasibility study on that project. And so in due course, we may be in a position to publish more information on that project. It's there as a potential growth pipeline project, though slightly lower down in the priority order than the ones I'll show, which are more advanced and under construction at the moment. But yeah, that's certainly an interesting, potentially exciting part of the future.
Thank you. Moving on to another question I have here. Cliff, about the process plant that you have at you're planning to construct at Regorodok. Obviously, we've talked about the high pressure grinding. Are there any other technical innovations that you'll be bringing to that gold recovery plant? Anything in particular?
No, most of it is fairly standard. As I say, it's the pump cells we introduced because they are saving on building and sex heating costs, and everything else is pretty standard.
Thank you. I've got a question now for Che about some of the projects that you were talking about in Kazakhstan, mineral potential. Obviously, we were joking about manganese then. I know there's some considerable manganese deposits in Kazakhstan that have been actually been selling direct shipping ore to steel plants. I know they haven't really been considering producing battery kind of manganese products. But what about other battery metals? What do you see for the potential for those things like lithium or cobalt or nickel in Kazakhstan?
Yeah, no, it is good. The manganese is an interesting one. I was, out of all of them, I was fairly skeptical about that sort of statistic. Couldn't find an awful lot of information about it, and as you say, most of it is direct shipment material, and therefore very little information in the public domain. There is, more potential for the battery metals. Obviously, we park tin. I mean, we all know that in terms of the EV sort of revolution, copper is a huge metal that's needed, and its demand will only increase for infrastructure and motors. On the battery side of it, tin is another of the significant metals which probably wasn't mentioned in the presentation, but we do know that Kazakhstan has tin reserves and tin potential. Lithium, which is obviously the one that most people talk about, the white gold. There is some potential for lithium in Kazakhstan, not huge. Obviously, some of it tied in and related to the tin. There are some of the pegmatite deposits as well, but very little, I would say, in terms of activity, should we say, going after these that we see in other countries, including the UK. So it hasn't, or it doesn't seem to have really taken off much in terms of those. Cobalt is there in some of those deposits, as you know, as an associate element. But yeah, we still haven't seen that kind of explosion in the battery metals sort of that we see elsewhere in the world. But as I say, the potential is there. Maybe not to the same degree, specifically for lithium, but there still is opportunity there, and as I say, still is potential. Zinc is another one which can't be excluded. And again, I think as the slide showed, there are big zinc potential. There is a big zinc sort of capacity in Kazakhstan, which perhaps again has quite a bit of growth opportunity. So the answer is yes. I mean, it's there, but we don't see it like we see elsewhere in the world.
Well, certainly, I mean, one of the battery metals that doesn't really get a lot of press, but is perhaps one of those things that's just waiting for the right kind of technology or the right sort of, I don't know, peak in demand to come on, is vanadium. And obviously the ferro alloys that listed in London a while back. And I know that they're currently processing catalysts from the oil industry to produce vanadium products for batteries. not as opposed to vanadium for sort of metallurgical steel making purposes. So I think they're one of the companies that is, they're moving forward with their plans for a feasibility study. So I think that's one project that certainly has got the potential. That it's a very huge deposit, that Balassaus Kandik project, and they've only really got half of it. It extends quite, it's quite large in that area. So I think that we will see a lot of growth in those areas, and also in the north. There's projects in the past like Shevchenko nickel that Wardell did the feasibility study for probably 15 or 16 years ago now, and nothing came of it. And it had, at the time, it had a pyrometallurgical route, and they ignored the cobalt in it. But it's one of those deposits that's never been developed and has the potential to be a hydromet project with a different route now. I'm not sure exactly who's got hold of it, but there's certainly projects like that that are sat there not really doing much. The technology, where it was coal and limestone and big furnaces that people were looking at back in 2003, it's a completely different technology now and different products. Instead of going to a metal, you might go for some kind of a sulfate or crystalline type of product for a battery production. So I think there's a lot of potential for those things here, and I'm sure that Askat will get more interest from people trying to take up licenses in those areas, and because it is so.
I completely agree, Mike. I mean, there are still a few sleeping giants in Kazakhstan. That given the right opportunity and the investment, could well turn into to major projects. It's interesting. I mean, in terms of, again, on a global stage, there is a lot of talking with governments about security of supply, specifically for the EV metals, but with that, there needs to be a sort of indigenous demand, I think, rather than a sort of, we can export this to there and that to there. There does need to be a little bit, I think, a bit of internal growth and demand for it to happen. The opportunity for, as you discussed with Askat as well, the small scale exploration companies that we see elsewhere in the world, scurrying around, looking at these potential opportunities that might not look much to start with. The big companies tend to overlook them. Kazakhstan needs that base of small exploration companies to do all of that groundwork and build that portfolio, so that it then can be expanded and basically sold off to the middle tier and the larger tier companies to then push through to development. And changes with the codes will hopefully bring that through. And as Askat alluded to, the ease of getting those licenses as well, the opportunities for international companies to come in and not necessarily need those joint ventures, but they can go it alone if they've got the support to do it and the financial backing to do it. And hopefully that will all feed into this industry and help that growth.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I think that although there's a question just asked on the chat there, I see one of the listeners has asked about the single exploration operator. I mean, that was something that Askat confirmed, that it's not mandatory to do a joint venture with Taukam Samruk or with Kaz Geology, as has been the case in the past. But I do know that some entities have chosen to have joint ventures with those entities to spread the risk and to also have some assistance in country for companies that aren't familiar with operating here. And I think that is a point that some people can find it unfamiliar. I mean, you and I, we've been working in Kazakhstan for many years now, and it's very familiar, but people who have just been working in Australia or other parts of the world, they see the Cyrillic alphabet and they think that, it's really alien to them. So they need a bit of assistance. Anyway, I think we're drawing to the end of our session, and we could go on a lot longer, I'm sure. But that's it for now. I'm afraid I'm going to hand it back to David for the closing remarks. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And I'll hand it over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Mike. Great job. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation, especially Askat in Nur-Sultan with the view on the industry from there and some illuminating comments. Mike and all of the panel, and you, the audience. and the person you haven't seen, Jean Toit, pulling the strings with the Zoom in the background. So finally, I'd just like to mention BKS events. In fact, tomorrow will be the very first education group discussion led by David Hardy. So I'd encourage you to, if you're interested in that area, that's tomorrow. Later in the year, we have renewables and our first financial services webinar. And next year, 2021, January, with agribusiness, followed by mining again, all being well, in February then. So I encourage you all to look at our website. We look forward to seeing you at the next BKS event, especially as BKS members. Thank you.